Greetings, my name's Andrew Sumner. My grandfather, Pop Smythe, bought me my first comic book in Liverpool, England, when I was 3 years old, and I spent the next 50 years hurtling around the pop culture kaleidoscope, first as a fan, and then as a journalist, editor, publisher and presenter. Along the way, I met a bunch of interesting people who will be joining me here, creators, performers, professionals and public servants. We live in divisive, fractured times, but art and popular culture connect people from all viewpoints and from all walks of life. I'm often struck by the passions people enjoy, that they can set aside their differences for and agree on whatever those passions are, whether I share them or not. And that spark, that moment of instinctive, connective agreement, that's what I call a hard agree. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Hard Agree. I'm Andrew Sumner. And one of the real highlights of my working life in recent years has been the fact that I've got to work a lot with Michael Moorcock, the world-renowned fantasy and science fiction author, the creator of Elric of Melniboné, the creator of Jerry Cornelius, the creator of the concept of the multiverse, which has come to dominate popular culture and comic book culture in the last decade, and the creator of so many wonderful, intelligent, and insightfully written novels. Mike's also collaborated. He is a musician who's collaborated with bands like Hawkwind and the Blue Oyster Cult. And he's truly one of the most fascinating people that I know. When we were talking recently, we had an idea that we'd put some of our conversations about his life and work down on record as part of Hard Agree. So welcome to this sub-series within Hard Agree, the first in an ongoing series entitled Michael Moorcock's Multiverse. And in this first episode, we have a chat about Mike's family, about the all-new Elric of Melniboné novel, a bit about Jerry Cornelius, a bit about his relationship with the great feminist author Andrea Dworkin, and we touch upon his wild ride through Hollywood that we'll continue to talk about in the next episode. I really hope you enjoy this. I had a lot of fun chatting with Mike, as I always do, and hope you have a good time with it too. Enjoy, and remember, this is Michael Moorcock's Multiverse. We're just living in it. Did they both get to see your success?
Oh yeah, they did. When Elric came out, when the first science fantasy magazine came out with Elric, and I think that was what it was. Oh, no, it was the book version. Anyway, It was the book version, and because you do. And I think I dedicated it to her too, and all that. Anyway, she I can remember it very clearly. She was sitting in a chair one side of the fire, and I was sitting in the chair the other side. And she picked up and she went, "Oh, Mike!" And she actually threw it across the room. And she said, "I don't know where you get it from. It's not your dad, and it's certainly not me." She never read another word I ever wrote.
Wow.
Meanwhile, my dad, who was meticulously neat, he had a shed, that had it's the typical shed with little tins of stuff and tiny, containers, all neatly marked. Anyway, so he bought my books. He had and I gave them to him sometimes, but he had a stack of them like this beside his chair. And he said, and each one had a slip of paper in it. He said, "I got that far with that one. Got that. I couldn't do that one. I got that far. I got that far." He said, "Why can't you do more of those?" And I'd done some Meg de Rice Burroughs pastiches years ago, the Cane of Old Mars, and he loved them. And he said, "Why can't you do more like that?" I'd written them all in a few days, and they're not my greatest work. That's what he loved. So that was it. They never read anything I wrote. Never.
Wow. That is fascinating.
They were kind of proud of me. They were sort of proud of. Well, my mother was. My dad, I think, if he was, I wouldn't have known it. And I'm very glad that he left, because he was an extraordinarily conservative and dull man. He was a nice man. You couldn't say anything against him, but he was just bloody dull. He had two interests, which was motorbike racing, which he'd done when he was younger. And when Arthur Clarke, he liked watching Arthur Clarke, The World of Arthur Clarke.
Oh, I remember that show. For sure.
Until he found out that Arthur was gay.
Right.
Once he found out that Arthur was gay, he couldn't watch it.
Oh, man.
Can't watch it. I'm sorry, I can't watch it. I said, he's a nice guy. He's a really nice man. He was in love with this person, for years.
Yeah.
And it was deep, but my dad wouldn't have it. It was after that, no Arthur C Clarke. So I was pretty glad I didn't have to go have that. I might never have done anything if he'd have been around. But my mother, I was an only child. My mother, child, devoted to son. I mean, I couldn't have had a better upbringing, really. I mean, given her everything.
And so you think that your mum, that relationship with your mum and that upbringing was the spur to your productivity and,
absolutely.
and your great success. And by the way, this is as good a moment as any to say, welcome to Hard Degree. And I'm here with my friend and at the same time, the legendary author, Michael Moorcock. And it's a pleasure to chat with you again, mate. Like it always
is. I look forward to it, actually.
I thought we could get into some things that we've had a bunch of chats recently for other reasons, but here on Hard Degree, one of the things that I'd like to talk to you about is a bit more about your music relationships and a bit more about Jerry Cornelius and the Multiverse, actually. But before we get into that, I just want to ask you. You've just actually finished the new Elric novel, right, Mike?
Yeah, I have.
So, Michael's signature character perhaps is Elric of Melniboné, some of the greatest sword and sorcery novels you're ever going to read. I'm biased because I love them, but I don't know anybody who doesn't love them. And what I'd love to know is the new novel. Where does that sit within the pantheon of Elric?
It's just before Stormbringer, the last book. It's set between the time that he meets Zarazinia, his second great love, or anyway, and it's between that period. Zarazinia basically says, "Bugger off and get some things settled, and sorted out." So he goes off. I don't want to give it away really because it's there's some sort of little.
I don't want you to spoil it. That's for sure.
Yeah, he goes off with Moonglum. Moonglum, in the meantime, has become the sort of president of a republic in his own land, Elware, which nobody's been to, nobody knows about. But he's become a sort of democrat. So there's a little bit of conversation. Elric doesn't see things in those terms. Obviously, is who he is, and he just can't get it. He says, well, what do you do with your slaves? And he's sort of got all these things. There's no slaves. No slaves. You get all your work done, and so on. So there's a little bit of that. I haven't overdone it, but that's the and then they have their adventures, which are mostly to do with dragons. It's a very dragony book. It's got at least 3 major dragons and lots of little ones.
Fantastic.
It's so I think
so. You're capturing the dragon zeitgeist.
Well, it's to do with Elric. We already know that Elric and the Faun, who are the dragons, are sort of related, as it were. And this is a very, very weird, because in terms of, if you think about it, it's really weird. And I haven't really gone into the details of it because it's basically a sort of combination of bees and dragons and humans. It's pretty. I'm not sure you could ever do it in science fiction or any other way than in fantasy. But anyway, it's I think it's got enough in it to make readers happy. And that's it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Do you have a title for the book, or have you not released that yet?
I think at the moment it's called The Citadel of Lost Myths, Forgotten Myths. Yeah. Citadel of Forgotten Myths. It's a bit more, I don't know, fancy than most of the other titles, but it fits the book. So
yeah.
there it is.
And when is that going to be with us, Mike? It'll be next year sometime, 2022.
Next year, yeah, which is a disappointment to me, but nonetheless, it'll be next year.
I mean, it would have been nice to see it this year, but for obvious reasons. But
Saga are bringing out a really nice edition, an illustrated edition of all the Elric books in 3 volumes.
Oh, lovely!
Which would be nice, and they're using illustrations and so on. They'll be pretty nice editions, I think.
And who's publishing that, Mike?
Saga, who've just been taken over by Penguin, I think. I don't know. They're no longer the independent corporation that they were. They're now a bigger corporation.
Yeah, well, finding independent book publishers is pretty difficult these days.
It is difficult, and I prefer independent publishers. I mean, I prefer the relationship you get. And, you can have a good relationship with an editor in a corporation, but the corporation is the final word on it, and I really don't much like that. I took all my books away from it's now HarperCollins, but whoever they were then. I just said if I was a director, Rupert Murdoch took them over, and he fired around Christmas time. He had all the reps come to a hotel in the Midlands, and they thought it was going to be a sort of just a discussion and so on at Christmas time, and maybe get a
bonus or something.
Yeah, and they got, as it were, pink slips. They got fired, and at that point, it was the little people in that corporation who were getting, well, I say little. I mean, they're important. I would say important, but the people without any power who were getting thrown out. And I just went to see the director then of the firm. So I can't remember any names or anything. I mean, it's terrible. But anyway, I went to see him and I said, "Look, if I was a director of your company, of this company, I would have to resign. Just on what's going on. I just couldn't do it." So equally, because I still see publishers in the old way, which is a partnership between them. Between me and them. I mean, it's an actual partnership, and a proper partnership should be, and usually is. And I said to him, if I was in that position, I'd have to resign. So I'm just pulling my books out, which in fact you couldn't technically do because they were all under contract for certain years and all the rest of it. But they let me have them back. But I remember standing in Fulham High Road, I think it was, where they were at the time. And I felt like I got 2 suitcases of stuff, I was on the street and I didn't know what to do with it. I just sort of pulled out. And then Anthony, I've forgotten his name. Anthony, anyway, was starting Orion.
Yeah.
And so I knew him and I said, do you want to do a deal with all of these? I mean, it's a lot of books. And of course, he said yes. And being the crook he was, I had trouble for the rest of. I mean, he's one of those people who you think, I know he's a crook, but he won't do it to me. I've known him too long, that sort of thing. And he does it. I mean, every bloody time. Even when he sold the company, the French company to Hachette, I think it was.
To Hachette, yeah, right on.
That's right. Even after he'd sold the company, they had to sue him because he'd lied to them about so many things. So, I mean, that's who he is, I mean, he's done it for years and years. And up to then, he'd never actually screwed me. This time he did. Yeah. So that went on for a long time. But they kept the books in print, and the books are still in print, thanks to Malcolm Edwards. It's Malcolm Edwards who's really the hero of science fiction and fantasy, because his mad ambition, I think, is to put everything back into print. Everything that's.
He's done a really wonderful job. It's Anthony Cheetham you were talking about a second ago, right?
Yeah, that's right.
He's
Cheetham by name.
Cheetham by name, Cheetham by nature. I love it. Your man at Orion's done a great job there. And those editions of your books that they publish are really lovely.
Well, the other thing is, which was good, is I had a certain amount of I had, they let me more or less do what I wanted to do. So I was able to get the covers I wanted. I wanted a Mano. And you'd done a lot of covers for the Japanese books, and nobody outside of Japan, as it were, had seen them. So I got a Mano to do a lot of Mano covers from the original Japanese ones, and some of them weren't. Some of them were original, and I got Mark Reeve to do the rest of them, who's very good, but slow.
Yeah,
he did a comic with me, the Multiverse comic. He did the what was it, Metatemporal Detective section.
Yeah,
and I loved the work he did. It was, it's very peculiar, but it's good. But he's so damn lazy. That he would not. It was nightmare working for him, because all the work came in, everything else came in. And he didn't. And you had to wait for him, because obviously you had to wait for him. And he always got it in eventually, but it was always nerves and wondering and all that.
Yeah, of course. So, something you just touched upon then, of course, is the multiverse, and I'd just like to use that as a kind of backdoor entryway into talking about your other signature character, Jerry Cornelius. So, what was the genesis of Jerry Cornelius? How did Jerry Cornelius come about?
He came out of Elric pretty much straight. I found that I couldn't do what I wanted to do with straight fantasy. I like writing it, but and there are ideas in it, which is probably what gives it a bit of substance. It's probably why it's lasted. But I couldn't say things about the modern world without it being, buggering up the story.
Yeah.
So I needed something. What I needed was a technique and a method where I could deal with what I called hot material, the news of the day, and present it and write about it in fiction. And I thought, well, Elric could do this if you. So I wrote the first Jerry Cornelius novel, which is far more conventional than anything else with Jerry Cornelius in it that I wrote. But at the time, I was being told, one person said the book was evil.
Is this the final program that we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is
amazing.
I wouldn't call it, it's just what it is. I suppose it's got a little bit of bisexuality in it or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, this person thought it was evil. Another person, and I'd already written several books and published several books, but this person said, "No, this is too. You really got to learn to write, and this is rubbish. I'm sorry," and turned it down. And it went on like that. I think it was a year or two before Clive Allison, who was just starting a new company, Allison and Busby, Margaret Busby, who's still with us, I think. And they were kind of sort of left wing, but they wanted to do more black writers and so on, because they were very idealistic, and I liked them. I got on very well with them. And so they published the final program, I think, first. And then Behold the Man. And at that time, the books were just getting straight reviews and pretty good ones too. I got very good press for Behold the Man from the religious press. It was extraordinary. Everybody got it, that it wasn't, as it were, an attack on religion. It was about belief and faith and so on. And so, the Jewish Chronicle gave me a good review. The Catholic Herald gave me. It was wonderful, and that went on for a while, and until the paperback publishers realized that the fantasy could be sold in hardback as well as paperback.
Yeah.
Now I was writing in paperback in a kind of, I suppose, a bubble, if you like, of readers, perfectly happy in a kind of an anonymity. I was sort of quite all right with that. I was getting well paid, and so on. Well, I wasn't getting well paid at first, but as is normal. But I eventually was well paid. Then the paperback started to come out. This is just a sort of a publishing story, really.
Yeah.
And people got confused. They from getting these kind of rather respectful reviews as a literary writer, all the paperbacks came out. They started, and they were incredibly successful at that time. I mean, Smiths had two tags. One was Tolkien, and the other was me.
I remember that era very, very clearly. By the way, where there were so many of your books on the shelf in nice matching editions. I know. It was a sort of fairly nice environment, although I was having a certain amount of domestic, But anyway, and once the paperbacks were out, the reviews started changing, if I got any reviews at all, because they suddenly saw me as this, if you like, pulp writer, because there was all these books coming out, and for a while I got pretty terrible reviews, because they would sort of, I don't know, it wouldn't be Hortman, Coram would come in, let's say, and on the stack, and they'd open it up and they think, what the hell is this? This is rubbish. Because in those days, people were like that. I mean, there was a severe difference, which I had been trying to alter, in New Worlds, trying to sort of change that. Which was your anthology title, yeah? Yes, Worlds, yeah. So anyway, and they for quite a while, I was kind of in a wilderness where the reviewers and so on were concerned, but I was all right. I think Peter Ackroyd, before I knew him, we became friends later, but I think he was then the books editor of The Spectator. Yeah, I think, and he wrote a piece about Coram, which was baffling. He was baffled by it, couldn't understand what it was, and he liked my work. So and this is the problem I started to get. Is that people didn't know what I did. They couldn't identify me. First of all, I'm this kind of successful Edgar Wallace type, writing a book a day, which was sort of all right. That was my image, and that went on for a while, and then finally, the last of the Jerry Cornelius books came out, the edition of Muzak. Yeah, and The Guardian had... That was about 1977, right, Mike? If I remember correctly. I think it was, 77, yes. So, yeah. Gloriana had done well as well within the science fiction world, It got the Nebula and so on. So, it was that was all right. And, then Condition of Music came out and it got the prize, and then things sort of turned in terms of, but that was partly because I was writing better too. But things turned about that time in terms of, and I became a different image, which again has nothing to do with me. But I started getting invited to, I don't know, posh events. I mean, there's one great event. God, it's that university where which turns out all our contemporary writers. It has Angus Wilson started. I can't remember. It's a program. And Andrea Dworkin was on the stage with me as well, and a couple of other people I knew slightly, but one of whom I disliked intensely at the time. I think was writing opera reviews and a review and he was working for the London. Was it called the London magazine? It was a literary magazine. Anyway. And the night turned into this incredible event, and I could tell from the audience they couldn't read the audience at all, and they were talking, to people who were very angry and upset. David, oh God, I'm terrible at names, but he was the boss of Cape at the time. This was a Cape event. I was being published by Cape, and one of the writers, a poet, actually got on stage and said the usual thing like, well, I'm a man, and I can't remember, but it was a sort of a standard statement that men had been making against feminists for years. And he, he's a guy who'd never got it, obviously, never read newspapers, but he was a poet. Anyway, and
and he couldn't control the audience. It was basically Andrea's audience and my audience, and that was it. And they also intersected, some of them. So Andrea and I were all right, but we were also the targets, as it were, of the people on stage. So the whole thing, became a complete, where the guy from, God, I can't remember his name. He used to work for the Telegraph as well. You'd know it if I said it, I'm sure. But anyway, he's very prissy, and he sort of, again, tries to sort of speak to the crowd, and they boo him off the stage. He's shoved off. He can't do it. The only two people who are okay on the stage are me and Andrea. And at that point, I bonded with Andrea. I didn't know who she was. I knew who she was, but I really didn't know anything about her. I knew she was supposed to be a very fierce feminist. She turned out to be a fierce feminist in public, but an extraordinarily loving and loyal and beautiful woman, and with friendships with all kinds of people, men and women. She wasn't sort of anything like the image that they'd made of her as this kind of classic feminist fighter, all that stuff. So I made a really, really wonderful friendship.
We were just talking about Jerry Cornelius, and there's a couple of things I wanted to ask you about. What did you think of the final program movie?
Well, I hated it. In a word.
No, I suspected that might be the case.
The director was absolutely mindless, I'm sorry to say. He had his ideas, and he had, he'd done the Dr. Bibes films.
Yes, right.
And the success of the Dr. Bibes films was clearly that they'd used every old British character actor that they could find, and put them in the movie, and then just killed them off, as it were. Everybody loves it, but it's to do with the actors. It's not to do with the director at all. It's to do with these old guys who knew what they were doing their job. The guy, he'd worked as an art director on the Avengers.
Yeah. And
basically he was an art director. He did have some good ideas in that direction, but he wanted to be I get mixed up with these damn film directors several times in my life. They want to be auteurs. They want to produce a movie that that is going to be one of those movies that appear in the cineasts and
right on. I hear you.
Yeah. When I was working with Irving Kershner, anyway.
Yeah, Irving Kershner. Yeah, for sure.
He'd done the Star Wars film, and as I said at the time, my dog Spot could have made the Star Wars film at that time, and people would have watched it, and it was like that. And it wasn't a very good movie. The second one, I didn't think. As a movie, I had to see it a lot because he sat next to me, telling me how brilliant he was on the shots of the movie, to the point where I just couldn't stand the movie, because I knew Lee Brackett, who's a friend of mine and had died, had written a script, and I knew damn well that if Lee had written a script, she worked with Howard Hawks for years.
Yeah, she was a great talent, Lee Brackett.
Right, Big Sleep.
Amazing career, amazing.
And she was a good friend of mine, right wing as hell, but a good friend.
Yeah,
it's hard sometimes. People don't have the same politics as you.
Yeah,
but anyway, I really liked her, and that script, it had been turned down, or something had gone wrong with it, and they brought in somebody else. And I thought it was a mess, but Kershner thought it was a work of genius because he'd done it. And he'd also done a film called The Luck of Ginger something or other, which had done very well. I can't remember. I'd never seen it. But so he had a kind of, at that moment, he was hot in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Simply because he had a big hit, the usual Hollywood procedures. And so he could do anything. So, at one point I didn't have any paper, and I was going to go out and buy a ream of paper, but I didn't know where. I was in that time. At that time I was in West Hollywood, and there weren't many stationers there. There were a lot of boutiques, and so I said, and he said, "Oh, paper." Picks up the phone, calls the studio, tells them to get a ream of paper from, miles away, the other side of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And to get it to me immediately. And so about, I don't know, an hour later or 2 hours later, this ream of paper is delivered from the studio to, it's that kind, I'm doing that kind of job. I'm working for a powerful person at that moment. After that, he did some really terrible films and disappeared. So anyway.
No, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm getting expenses. And originally, they said, well, just bring in your bills and we'll give you the expenses. And I said, well, I can't. I haven't got any money at that point. I had no money. I got to Hollywood and that was it. No, that's right. I flew on Concorde. It was wonderful. I was in a terrible state, really. Anyway, but I had a good time while I was in that state.
Oh, yeah.
I flew on Concorde. It was, in those days, Concorde wasn't that expensive. I suppose they were trying to push it, but it didn't cost, it didn't cost millions. It cost hundreds, but,
it must have been an amazing experience flying on Concorde.
Well, it wasn't. I thought to myself, looking around at the other passengers, I wouldn't want to die with these people.
Oh, right.
I'd rather be in steerage with
the regular people.
With people I feel I could die with all right. So, which is always my thought when flying. I mean, I fly all the time, but it's all. I always leave a will before I get on the plane. I mean, it's ridiculous. I've got over any kind of nerves, because it's. Yeah. But I still got the habits. But oh well, you better write a will. So anyway, I was in Hollywood, and
that was working with Irvin Kershner when you were in Hollywood.
Yes, it was weird because. I wrote a whole book about it, which actually nobody's seen. It's a strange thing because it's a large-sized book with beautiful illustrations called Letters from Hollywood. Because before I left, Jimmy Ballard had asked me. He said, just write me some letters. He said, do some traveling for me. He was a terrible bastard. He never went anywhere. I mean, he never liked to go anywhere. And he'd actually made a virtue of the suburbs of living in this this little house in Shepperton. I mean, it was genius will take whatever it gets, as it were, and turn it into something. And he did. But anyway, he said right, just write me a few letters saying what it's like. So I did. I started writing letters first of all about when I was living in North Hollywood.
These are letters you wrote to J.G. Ballard, right?
Yes, yeah.
This book, by the way, anybody listening to this really wants to check this out, because I think, as you've alluded to, Mike, this book's a real hidden gem, particularly if you're a fan of your writing and you're a fan of your perspective and you're a fan of Hollywood. I was a movie journalist, as you know, and I've always loved that book.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love it, as it were, too. But and so did the publisher. You can tell from the production. It wasn't just thrown out. It was a really well done book. Actually, I've got the covers somewhere of the original. I mean, they changed the jacket. It was Mike. What's Mike's name? The guy who illustrated it.
Michael Foreman. Michael Foreman.
Yeah. And he'd actually been, he'd been to Hollywood and made some of the drawings of stuff he'd already done, but others were stuff for the book. And it's just great. And I really wanted the book to come out with his illustrations.
Yes.
Which is why the book really has never appeared, because Ryan were going to do it. And but I said, you're going to do it with the illustrations, because I felt it, the illustrations were part of it.
Well, very much part of what you've done. Yeah. Yeah.
And originally I'd written them, and Jimmy had published them in a literary magazine. Again, it begins with an A. I can't remember the name of the damn. I'm terrible on proper names. I'm great on spelling, but once it comes to proper names, I'm just terrible. Anyway, hell's the name of the magazine. It'll come up. Anyway, he published. He was the literary editor of the magazine.
Yeah.
And that's where they first appeared, some of them. And then I rewrote them a little bit to make them a little bit more accessible, as it were.
Yeah.
And I left out the cocaine as well.
Surely this book is begging for a new edition, right?
Well, it is. It is. But of course, I'm also writing in The Whispering Swarm and The Woods of Albion, the so far the two books which are autobiographical and fantasy. So and the autobiography in the second book is absolutely as honest as I can be.
Oh, fantastic!
So there'll be stuff like that probably in the third book, which gets closer to the Hollywood period.
Yeah,
but I won't write much about it because Letters from Hollywood already exists.
Letters from Hollywood does most of the job.
I would like it to come out sometime, and it's oddly they published a huge edition. I mean, they published really thousands of copies, and America would not take it. New York is very snotty about Hollywood. I mean, This is the truth. It's as you probably know, it's a weird thing, and Hollywood won't have anything to do with New York, as it were. And so and here I am with a book that's which loves Los Angeles. It's just it's a pain to Los Angeles. I love Los Angeles. I don't know about you, but it's just it's in my blood
for sure. I feel the same way. Whether it's going to Angel's Flight, whether it's going to the Bradbury Building, or whether it's going to Pasadena, I love all of those places.
Yeah, we nearly got an apartment in that apartment complex where Marilyn Monroe was, and
wonderful!
Lots of people. I can't remember. It's a beautiful. It's a little village. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Like a little fantasy village, really, from a fantasy movie. But it's small. You forget how small all those people were.
Yes.
And when we came in, the landlady, she was very nice. She said, "Oh, welcome. Here's the flats." And we really did want to live there because it wasn't that expensive, and it was where we wanted to live. The area was where we wanted to live. And we got in there, and we're ducking all the time. Even it's like a medieval. We used to have an old cottage in Oxfordshire, which knocked me out. Actually, knocked me out one day by just hitting the beam of the door. So we just couldn't do it. Unfortunately, it was like little people's like a little fairy village, and you just forget when how tiny most actors are.
Yeah,
My theory about film actors, particularly, is that they project because they've always had to project. They've always had to kind of look up, and if they want to get anything, they've got to really present themselves. So they can do this. They get this on. You get this on camera, and they're really doing a great job. They're good at it. But when you look at the person and beside, let's say, the doorknob, you get an idea that these are all munchkins that you're admiring. You're afraid of Humphrey Bogart's going to die. He's going to die. It's a munchkin who's going to die. So, if you actually saw the thing in perspective, you'd see all these tiny people sort of running around. It's like a bunch of elves. It'd be nice, really. I'd like it.
Yeah, for sure. So despite your love of Hollywood, your love of movies and whatnot, have you ever had, or any of the film projects you've been attached to, whether they happened or not, are there any of them that you're particularly fond of?
Well, I did the Land That Time Forgot.
Yes.
With Jim Cawthorne. Jim had already broken it down. He was going to do a comic of it, so he just broke it down again, and I wrote the script.
Yeah.
And what had happened was, with the final program, I'd been very disappointed in the script. First of all, a friend of mine had asked to do it, and I'd sort of said yes. I knew he was a speed freak. I mean, he was injecting methadone. And methadone. And
wow. Okay, that's pretty heavy.
Yeah, and he got himself a suite at the Savoy, which he couldn't pay for, and was completely crazy. Decided that the final program was actually about Herbert Hoover.
Right.
No, Hoover, the FBI guy.
Yeah, oh yeah, Jag Hoover.
Yeah. And the script was just a kind of farrago of nonsense. I mean, he'd just gone crazy. I remember going to see him at the Savoy. It was sort of, a sort of nightmare. So the whole of the final program was finally taken over by the guy who shot it, whose name I've also forgotten. Anyway, it's all written down somewhere. And he'd had success with the Dr. Phibes films. So he did a script which was not very good. It had a huge number of reaction shots, which, I don't know if, movies better than I do. But when somebody says, this is a bad deal, you don't have somebody else saying, oh, yes, it's a bad deal. You don't have people reacting, in other words, to everything, because it slows everything down. I mean, we know it, we know all this stuff. It should move. He just couldn't. He was a good art director, and some of the scenes are good, but he just didn't know what he was up to. He wanted Billie Holiday for the soundtrack. I mean, this is a book that was written basically in rejection of all of that. Yes. None of which I disliked, but it was time. We were doing other stuff. We weren't doing that kind of stuff.
Because didn't you originally want Hawkwind to do the soundtrack on the movie?
I did. Hawkwind came to the studio. It was very funny. Film Hawkwind, they were on a little stage in a big studio, and they started. I mean, and they actually the crew was kind of forced back by the sound. They kind of went when Hawkwind started up, and somebody said, "Could you turn it down a bit, lads?" And Dave Brooks said, "We are turned down," which he was. They were.
Brilliant.
And he didn't. They hated Hawkwind. They hated everything about my lifestyle, as it were, and Friends, because I would turn up. I had a huge car at that time, so I could pack loads of mates in the thing when we go out to the studio, so they could have a bit of fun, look at it, have a free meal too. They obviously didn't like that either. These hippies all when they actually hated.
Well, I think I've made a note of where we are with that anecdote. I would love to hear the full form version of that. Yeah. And I'll set up a part 2 with Linda. That'd be awesome.
All right. Yeah, great. Yeah.
Hey, mate, it's great to chat to you as always, and I'll look forward to doing it again soon.
Yeah. Okay, I'm much cheered up from this morning. Well, not this morning, but this afternoon, feeling dreadful, and I'm feeling much better now. I'll probably feel dreadful in half an hour, but I've enjoyed this.
I've enjoyed this chat as always, mate, and I look forward to doing another one soon.
Yeah. Okay.
You've been listening to Hard Agree. This episode was edited by John Horsley and Kenrick Regan, and our theme music, Golden, was written and performed for this show by Liverpool's finest band, DENIO. Hard Agree is a production of the Spoilerverse and myself, Andrew Sumner.